Hello and welcome to another edition of the Campfire Chat series. Today we will share students' perspectives on designing inclusive MLE institutional policies. My name is Haley McNamara. I am a research manager at WestEd, and I also help to support our student advisory board for the Translating Opportunity Texas project. This chat today is supported by a grant from Ascendium and is produced by WestEd in partnership with the Texas Success Center and Student Ready Strategies. Joining me and presenting today is my colleague, Kata Traxler, the Director of Post-Secondary Strategy at Student Ready Strategies. She is also helping to support the technical assistance component of the Translating Opportunity Texas project. You will also be hearing from three members of the Translating Opportunity Texas Student Advisory Board. We'll have Robert Castillo from El Paso Community College, Gregorio Lopez from South Texas College, and Leary Witter from Houston City College. On our agenda for today, I will kick things off by reviewing the methods that we use to gather MLE student feedback on school policies. Then I will hand it off to our student advisors to share their findings and recommendations based on their policy reviews. Kata will jump in towards the end of our time today to share some additional findings from her work reviewing the policies for the Translating Opportunity Texas school teams. And then I'm going to round it out by sharing some additional resources that can help folks watching the video in designing school policies that are really inclusive of MLE students. Please note that throughout the video, we'll be using the terms ESL and MLE sort of interchangeably. So just wanted to flag that as you're viewing. Okay, jumping into our methods. So our student advisors spent about 1 hour reviewing the policies that participating schools have previously submitted to Student Ready Strategies for review. Our students used SRS's policy review framework to guide their feedback and their recommendations that they made after reviewing the policies. And my colleague Kata is going to tell you more about that framework up next.
Student Ready Strategies has an expertise in both evaluating and creating institutional policy. To help institutions to evaluate their policies, we have created an institutional policy review framework. The tenets from this policy review framework include being centered on students, streamlined in structure, explicit in language, and validated by data. Centered on students is one of the most important tenets of this framework. This includes language that centers on students and having an asset-based view of students. Streamlined in structure. Policy should be free of unnecessary details and easy to understand. Also, jargon and industry-specific words are clearly defined in the policy. Finally, the policy is validated by data. Policy effects are being measured and monitored. This is especially important as institutions continue to evaluate the impact of their policies and want to improve upon them.
We know from research and from talking to real students that MLE students often face additional challenges when pursuing their educational goals as compared to their English fluent counterparts. And according to the theory of universal design, designing systems for the people who need the most support actually results in changes that benefits everybody. So by centering the needs of MLE students specifically as you design your institutional policies, you can actually create policies that better suit your entire student body. And up next, I'm going to invite our three student advisors to share their takeaways from the review process. So our first student advisor that we'll be sharing today is Gregorio Lopez from South Texas College, and he's going to be telling us a little bit more about policies around admissions and registration.
After reading different policies, I noticed that many policies exclude and have little information about adult learners as well international students. The policies must be designed for adult learners in a different way that they're designed for traditional students coming from high school. Adult learners, they stopped attending a school years ago, and now they come in with more difficulties. They might be parents, they have work, and they have to combine these jobs and family issues with the schools. So they need more help than others. The college, they should provide that help in the their policies, they need to be welcome. They need to be feel confident that they won't struggle. For international students, what I find out is there is not much information for them. International students, they need to go through a lot of process to be accepted in colleges. And if the colleges, they're not help them with that, they might give up during the process. They need to know where to go, what to do. There's some information like vaccination, for example. They don't know. The policies just said they must have vaccination, but they don't specify what type of vaccination, if they needed to have it in their countries, or those vaccinations they will be provided here. What are the requirements for the college beside the government? There is a lot of resources that they should be provided in there are many links where they can click and get that information in particular for them, for their visas, work visas, opportunities at their college. If they need to work, there might be options in their own college to work outside. What will be the options after being graduated? A lot of help for them that they should be provided in the policy. For undocumented students, there should be more information about them. They face significant barrier, such as financial aid, state level tuition policies, and they have thoughts about if they have a legal right to attend public colleges. Information must be provided, such as changes from government laws. They need to have that information right away, and the school should provide it to them.
So on this side, we have an example of an admissions policy for adult, MLE, and international students that was crafted based on feedback from our student advisors. At the top, we've included some welcoming language to help all students know that your campus is really a place for them where they can be safe and welcomed. In the middle of this example here, we have a table that clearly lays out information for each key group of learners because we know that their needs might be different. And this is where you can lay out all of the really great and useful information that Greg was just mentioning for each of your key groups of learners. And then finally, at the bottom of our example here, we've included some language from a resource that advisors really appreciated when they were reviewing school policies, and it's the Career for You Academy. And including resources like these in your admissions policies and advertising them on campus where students can see and access them can help students overcome things like financial barriers, and it really just sends a message that your school really cares about them and their success. Up next is Layuri Witter from Houston City College, and she's going to be sharing about testing and placement policies.
My name is Layuri Witter. I'm from Houston City College, and talking about the testing placement, many ESL students are adults who are coming to the institution with a lot of a background, prior life, school, work experience, and this can try to feel like hard to put just in the high stakes with the tests. Students they're coming to feel like labeled rather than be treated as an individual and unique with a really good background life experiences. Sometimes this is the first time that the ESL students can interact with the college, and then this can impact how the experience of learning they will have in this college. To help this process more human-centered and inclusive of the ESL students, we can encourage the students to reach out with meeting support, like not a really long meeting. It can be short meeting to present their thoughts, what they want to have, they want to study, what they want to learn, and then the college will be known about the expective of the student learning. And I think this will be really interesting, and the student will be ready to and comfortable to learn to study in this place. So I think meet each other is really special and really interesting to the ESOL students. Connect students to supporting resources. This is really interesting. So I had a little experience in the past weeks. The professor had a little conversation with me, and he told me to find my advisor and talk about what happened with me, and he guided me in some result situations that was really helpful for me. So connect students with the support. This is really important, and then the student feel more human, more like the college hug your problem, not just yourself, not just your knowledge. And then I think the students get more involved in college too. This is really important to me.
Thank you so much, Leire. Building on the point that Leire made earlier about looking at students as whole people, not just a single test score, three ways that you might consider doing that are by looking at the following kinds of data sources alongside those really important test scores. So you could also consider things like interviews, actually just having a chat one-on-one with students, either in person or over Zoom in a really comfortable setting to assess their language abilities, their goals, their strengths, and maybe the areas where they might need some more support. You could also look at things like portfolios alongside test scores. So have students submit some examples of work that they've already completed in their jobs, for their home lives, or for prior degrees that they might have. And then lastly, you could also have students complete a project. So having students do things like writing an agenda for a meeting or an email to really demonstrate sort of their language abilities in a way that they might be familiar with from their career, from their jobs, etc. And up next is Roberto Castillo from El Paso Community College, who's going to share more about academic progress and probation policies.
What stood out to me is not just what policies exist, but what how they are experienced in real life. We know that ESL students really want to do well, and that's why they enroll. But it can be hard to get back on track, especially when they experience major life events in their life, like loss, jobs, or even changing childcare arrangements, especially because they experience some challenges that English fluent peers do not face. Students whose grades go drop off or sleeping, they need access to resources, support, or connections that can help them, especially because we all experience bad situations in our lives. But imagine experience a bad situation and adding the frustration that you can express yourself in another language is very frustrating, and sometimes is very easy to drop off or withdraw because there's too much stress in their lives. Academic progress probation policies that focus on more on consequences than support and use words like a fail, probation, suspension. It can feel punitive and scary and intimidating. Um, while these policies mean well, they can also have unintended impacts by failing to connect people to support that they probably need, discouraging students from continue their education and making them feeling like they are not capable to success. We recommend taking more human-centered approach. For example, keep the initial letter short or with a supportive, friendly tone. Make sure their students know your schools will be there to support them in getting back on track. Set up a face-to-face conversations with support staff to check in, make sure that their student is okay, and see how the school can support them in getting back on track. And the last thing is be careful when you use this punitive language and try to make it very friendly to all the students can understand the language, especially when you use words like notwithstanding. It's one of the words that I read on one of the policies that is kind of difficult when you're not able to understand this kind of language. So I know that this is academic or institutional language that is very common to use this, but as a foreign person who is this the first experience learning this language and experiences college, it's kind of difficult to understand this. That's why I also encourage you to apply this one-on-one help when teachers and staff can help the students to understand these difficult concepts. That's why we try to make this an ongoing check-ins to celebrate the progress instead of um, make probations. And it will help the students to feel more comfortable in their colleges and also to understand all the institutional needs.
So here's an example of what a more human-centered academic probation process might look like based on our student advisor feedback. So you'll see that this process begins with a short email or a letter informing students that they've met the criteria for receiving some additional support from your school, and referencing it as a student success plan and kind of really trying to avoid that academic probation language. The tone of this initial communication really matters because it's going to set the tone for the rest of sort of the student's engagement, whether or not they choose to take you up on the support. So it should really be friendly and supportive. Step 2 is requiring the student to meet either in person or over Zoom with a member of support staff, and bonus points if that support staff speaks the language that the student who's needing support speaks. The conversation should first and foremost really focus on how the student's doing and their overall well-being. Lots of times if students are struggling in school, it's because they're going through something in their personal home or work lives that's affecting their ability to be successful on campus. So really leading with that, just, are you okay? What do you need right now? And then rounding out the conversation with really coming up and co-constructing together a plan for success and helping the student to get back on track. And then finally, establishing some regular check-ins with students to monitor and really importantly, celebrate their progress as they're on their academic success journey. So this is an example of sort of a re-envisioned process according to our student advisors. And actually, many of the suggestions that students gave align with research on best practices for supporting struggling students. And in particular, there are ideas around step 1 here and how to re-envision sort of the initial notification that you've been placed on academic probation. So on this slide here, I've summarized findings from a study from Waltenbury, Brady, and others. And in this particular study, the researchers, they worked with teachers and students to actually co-author what they call more psychologically attuned probation letters. These letters did a couple of really important things. First of all, they normalized struggle in school as something that happens to a lot of us, and it doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to get back on track. Secondly, they connected students to actual resources that they could use sort of immediately in order to be more successful in school. They conveyed a sense of care and compassion, so really leading with that sort of human first approach. And they promoted a sense of belonging, so really trying to connect students to other people who could support them on their journey. And what these researchers found is that sort of across the board, being placed on academic probation leads to pretty strong negative feelings of shame and stress for all students, regardless of which letter that they got. However, the students who received the more psychologically attuned letters reported that they preferred those letters over the original ones, and that reading that letter helped lead to increases in hope that they could actually make a comeback, perceived support that your school actually cares about them, belief that school staff care about them, and also, really importantly, their GPA the following term. So just really rethinking how we're communicating the idea that students need more support to them can actually impact their grades, whether or not they take you up on those offers the following term.
The feedback that the students provided about all of the campus policies aligns with the SRS framework and is aligned with evidence-based practices. So to highlight some of the most important pieces that students stated, intentionally include MLE and ESL students in the institutional policy making process. Students should always be included in the institutional policy making process. And by intentionally including these student groups, then this allows them to know that these policies are for them, apply to them, and make it so that they can easily understand them. There should also be a review schedule created for all student-facing policies. Policy is rooted in context, and context can change quickly. It's really important to make sure that all policies that are student-facing are easy to understand and regularly evaluated for improvement. Also, all procedures and documents referenced in policies should be linked wherever the policies are posted. So whether this is an academic handbook, a website, these need to be referenced so that students can reference them and administrators and faculty know where to find them. Students need to understand all of the institutional policies, including the student-facing ones. All institutional policies need to have clearly defined terms and phrases if they are used within the policy. Everyone reading the policy needs to understand what the policy is for and how it is implemented, and students especially need to understand all of the policies that directly impact their experiences. Finally, we need to make sure that policies are translated into languages spoken by MLE students. It's really important for institutions to have an assessment and find out what languages are spoken by the students on their campuses, and really give the opportunity to have policies translated into a language that students feel most comfortable reading so they can fully understand what is being expected of them. All of these reflections directly impact the student experience. To quote W. Edwards Deming, every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it does. So institutional policy codifies and maintains our systems in higher ed. If we are not seeing the outcomes, we need to look at the system. And in this case, it is institutional policy.
Okay, so wrapping up, alongside this video, we've included a copy of the protocol that we use to solicit students' feedback on institutional policies. And we encourage you all to take a look at that protocol and consider talking to a couple students on your own campus as you review and revise your own institutional policies. Also, teams who are participating in the Translating Opportunity Texas project have access to their policy review memos that were provided by Student Ready Strategies. So we encourage you to take a look at that for more information about how you might review and revise your institutional policies. And then to round it out, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to all of our presenters on the call today, both our student advisors and my colleagues at Student Ready Strategies.